November 14th, 2015, Ronda Rousey suffered her first career loss in mixed martial arts, losing her UFC championship belt to Holly Holm and a well-timed head kick. Almost 10 years later, Dricus Du Plessis loses the middleweight championship after an 11-fight win streak that included 2 title defenses. The two situations are different in many ways, but there may be a valuable lesson Dricus can learn from Ronda's mistakes. In 2015, Ronda was set to fight a world-class striker in Holly Holm, but her coach, Edmund, had her convinced that she could and would outbox Holm. In 2025, Dricus was facing one of the best wrestlers in the history of MMA, but his coach, Morne, thought he had the skill to beat Khamzat anywhere, even on the mat. Ronda Rousey's rise was a phenomenon. An Olympic bronze medalist in judo, she bulldozed through the women's bantamweight division in King of the Cage, HKFC, and Strikeforce before it was acquired by the UFC. She became known for her persistent judo throws and trips, and her sudden, vicious application of the armbar submission. Following a first-round armbar victory over Liz Carmouche at UFC 157, Rousey became the UFC's first female champion, and went on to win her next 5 fights in a row, including 3 first-round stoppages due to knockout or TKO. To many, Ronda Rousey seemed unbeatable in the women's bantamweight division. But she wasn't above criticism, and some of the aspects of her career drawing negative attention related to her coach, Edmund. Rousey began training with Edmund, a boxing coach, in 2010 before her first amateur MMA fight. Apparently, Rousey had to convince him to train her, as he was initially reluctant to work with a female fighter. But Edmund did become her coach, and as Ronda rose to fame, he became an active part of the narrative surrounding many of her fights, not to mention outside the octagon conflicts. In hindsight, it seems clear that Edmund and Ronda's long-standing friendship caused blind spots for both of them. Ronda couldn't see that Edmund didn't possess the skill or experience to coach a world-class fighter at the highest level, and Edmund glossed over her weaknesses in training, allowing himself to believe that he had turned her into a world-class striker in just a few years. While Ronda's striking improved, contributing to her wins by knockout, it still lagged far behind her elite grappling skills, and the female fighters that she knocked out weren't known for their striking skills, and in most cases were more focused on defending against her takedowns. But Edmund believed Ronda could knock out any opponent she faced, and Ronda believed Edmund. Against Holly Holm, a former boxing champion, Rousey didn't press for the takedown, and Edmund didn't call for it. Footage from Rousey's corner during the fight shows Edmund constantly calling for head movement, until moments before the head kick knockout, when Rousey is already badly hurt, and he frantically shouts for her to clinch. The loss was a shock, and it seemed clear that the biggest failure was in the game plan. But that didn't get better. In her next and final MMA fight, Rousey tried to outbox Amanda Nunes and got KO'd again for her trouble. Dricus Du Plessis rose to fame in the world of mixed martial arts, best known for his physical strength and relentless conditioning. His prowess as a fighter led him all the way to the UFC, where he won the middleweight championship and successfully defended it twice. Du Plessis has worked with one head coach throughout most or all of his MMA career, which spans more than a decade, and in that time, they've become close friends and business partners as co-owners of their local gym. The two obviously know each other well and respect each other, and it seems likely that Visser's skill as a coach contributed to Dricus's success in mixed martial arts. But in both the lead-up to UFC 319, where Dricus attempted to defend his belt against Khamzat Chimaev, and in the aftermath of that loss, Morne Visser has said some very questionable things in interviews, including acknowledging that he thought Dricus would be able to out-wrestle Khamzat, and that the reason Khamzat was able to establish a mounted crucifix so often in the fight was that escaping the crucifix was the one part of grappling they forgot to practice. But the crucifix was far from the only issue. Du Plessis' entire strategy in the fight, as well as his individual takedown skills, did not seem like they had been prepared or tested to the extent that they should have been in preparation for a fight with a wrestler like Khamzat. This ultimately led to Dricus losing one of the most one-sided championship fights that we've ever seen in the UFC. Now, let me be clear about what I'm not saying. I'm not saying that Ronda Rousey and Dricus Du Plessis are the same person, and I'm also not saying that this is the exact same situation. There are many very obvious differences. I'm also not saying that Morne Visser, Du Plessis' coach, and Edmund Tarvarian, Rousey's coach, are the same type of person or that the same issues are present. The only comparison I'm drawing here is that in both cases, you have a special athlete who rose to prominence in the world of mixed martial arts and brought their coach with them. And it seems very possible that in both cases, while the coach may have been a valuable contributor to their success, that doesn't mean that they're qualified to be the head coach in charge of everything for training a world-class mixed martial artist who's competing at the highest level. And this is what I hope Du Plessis can learn from Ronda Rousey. After Rousey lost to Holly Holm, she did not make any of the necessary adjustments. She went into her fight with Amanda Nunes with the exact same attitude that she went into her fight with Holly Holm, and she got beat up even worse. And I have to be honest, from what I've seen Morne Visser saying in the aftermath of Dricus losing at UFC 319, it doesn't really seem like he has the right takeaways. But I'm also not saying that Dricus needs to fire his coach or replace him or something like that. It seems like the two of them have an excellent professional and personal relationship. However, it does seem like Dricus needs to shake things up in his training. And that could mean something like hiring a new head coach and having his current coach be his strength and conditioning coach, because I know that strength and conditioning is something that Dricus is very well known for. So maybe Visser has been instrumental in that. I'm not sure. Or Visser could remain his head coach, and they could bring in specialists as consultants and sparring partners, but not just a sparring partner who gets paid for the day and steps into the cage. You need to bring in people who are going to audit his skills and abilities at the most rigorous level. People who are going to put him in every bad grappling situation imaginable and force him to learn how to get out of them. And I don't have the most experience in mixed martial arts, but I did train for several years and at a few different gyms. And with any of the coaches that I worked with, if one of their fighters couldn't escape a mounted crucifix, that fighter wouldn't be able to show up for the fight because someone would still be holding them down in the gym. So again, I'm not saying that there are any specific similarities between Edmund and Morne Visser as people, and I'm not saying that these situations are the exact same, but I do think that there's a common factor where both Rousey and Dricus could have been better prepared for these title defenses if their head coach hadn't been so confident that they could just devastate any opponent. And the thing is, MMA fighters are supposed to think that way. When MMA fighters are going into their professional bouts, especially at the highest championship level, they need to believe as deeply as possible that they are capable of winning. Otherwise, it's very unlikely that they will win. It's the coach's job to have a much more grounded, realistic vision of their strengths and weaknesses, their capabilities, what they need to focus on, and what they need to avoid. And if your head coach is also your best friend, who you have a 10-year plus relationship with, that might affect their ability to be completely objective. And it might affect your ability to be completely objective about their performance as your coach. And when you see Coach Edmund saying things like, Ronda's better than any female boxer in the world, Ronda's going to knock out Holly Holm, and you see Coach Visser saying things like, I think Dricus can beat Khamzat anywhere, including in grappling, you can see that they're failing to objectively assess their fighters' abilities. And understanding that your fighter isn't the absolute best at everything doesn't mean that you think any less of them, and it doesn't mean that they can't win. But in order for them to win at the highest level of competition, they're going to need someone in their corner who is objectively assessing and dealing with the most important threats that they face. For Ronda against Holly Holm, the biggest threat was Holm's striking, and she ran into it face first. In Dricus' fight, the biggest threat was Khamzat's wrestling, and he failed to adequately prepare for it. And I really do hope that Dricus can learn from this and move forward. Georges St-Pierre is famous for telling fighters after they lose that the loss can be the best thing that ever happened to them if they take the right lessons from it. I hope Dricus Du Plessis can do that. Thanks for watching My Fitness Fight, the channel where we stand shoulder to shoulder to battle our demons and share memes along the way. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment if you'd like to see more essay-style videos like this.